going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, live on Game Plus Network, here on the fly. Chris Meaney hanging out with you. Appreciate you guys hanging out here with me. I did have a guest lined up today to really dive into some buy lows and some sell highs. We could touch on some of that here today, but tomorrow for sure. I got a great guest, I think, lined up for us tomorrow, and we're going to have some buy low and some sell high candidates. Really getting into the time of the season to make some of those moves, right? You're either in it or you're out it. A lot of people are out it. Yeah, you're out of it. You're in it. A lot of people at this point of the season, right, as we head into week 9, there's 6 teams on bye. This is the most teams we've seen on bye just yet. I think this is the time of the year you can take advantage of people in your fantasy football leagues, right? Some teams are desperate near the bottom of the basement. They need a couple wins, especially this week where if they have certain guys, as I mentioned yesterday, the best time I think to trade with somebody is when, there's like they're reeking of desperation, but also they have players on bye and they only have a couple wins. Like this is basically it. They need to win here. They need to go on a couple, on a run to have a couple wins. So if they can't get a win this week, they're out of it, right? So you got like a team like the Niners on bye. You probably can't get Christian McCaffrey. Can you get Brendan Ayuk? Can you get George Kittle? There are 6 teams on bye. Could you get CeeDee Lamb? Probably not. Do you want Zeke? I don't think so. I think Tony Pollard's a pretty good sell high candidate, actually, after last week. The big game that he had. I do think Zeke comes back out of the bye, and he's just kind of a pain in the butt to Tony Pollard owners. He's not going to go away anywhere. He's still a great pass blocker. But on this show this week, it's going to be a lot of buy low, sell high, taking a look at the fantasy football question, schedule, things like that. Deesh is in the house, offered Pollard for Hop, and the guy offered Chase. So I'd probably make that move, if you were fine at the running back position. I think Tony Pollard is great, but when Zeke comes back, what is he? Is it flex? And you've got a guy in Chase who's a top 5 wide receiver. Now, there is certainly some risk with this addition to your squad if you make that trade. Clearly, if you could get Hopkins, away you go. I think we talked yesterday about trying to reach high, and I'm glad that you did that. You tried to reach high with a guy that, is a borderline wide receiver 1 in DeAndre Hopkins. Well, he's shown us nothing besides being a wide receiver 1. His first 2 games with the Arizona Cardinals this season, double-digit catches in each of them and a ton of targets. I think like 25 or 27, something silly like that. So you got the Detroit boys. You're saying here's your running backs, the Detroit boys. You got Walker and then B-Rob and J-Rob. So you're kind of thin at the running back position, but you're going to roll out Walker. You could probably roll out both Detroit backs. Jamal Williams is inside the top 5 and red zone rushing attempts inside the 10. He's clearly the goal line back in Detroit. He had a couple touchdowns last week. And Swift, not a big showing from him last week, but certainly going to be involved through the air. So you have that, that Detroit combo that you can work in. Brian Robinson for the first time was out snapped, and really he had owned the majority of the backfield since he made his NFL debut. We saw a little bit of Antonio Gibson there, and he's catching some balls out of the backfield, so he's kind of a pain in your butt. And then with J-Rob, I do believe he's going to be the lead there in New York. So you're kind of thin at the running back position, but I don't know the rest of your team in terms of wide receivers, but that would be an upgrade. The only way that I wouldn't do that move, Deesh, is if you were hurting. Like if you're not off to a good start, but we're near the halfway point here. If you only have 2 or 3 wins, I don't think you can afford to acquire Jamar Chase. But he is a buy low candidate just because he's not going to play for a little bit. So first thing I would do in all my leagues, I would search Jamar Chase in all of the leagues and see who has Chase. And if Chase is on a team that's in the basement or near the basement, they need bodies right now. I'd be looking to give them whatever. Just selling high on certain wide receivers, a 1-2 punch. You sell this guy, you sell that guy. You include Pollard, things like that. And then you get yourself a Jamar Chase. You have him for fantasy football playoffs, a stretch run, and things like that. Just saw a report that maybe Nyheim Hines is traded here. I know that he's been rumored. We'll keep an eye on that to see if it actually is happening. I think it's just a rumor report. A lot of rumors happening right now in the NFL. Kareem Hunt, Damian Harris, Dave Montgomery. I've heard of Brendan Cooks, Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Johnson. I've heard a lot. We'll see what happens here in the NFL. But yeah, Deesh 5-3 most points. I think you're in a pretty good spot. JJ, Godwin, Cooks, Bateman, Wandell. Now Bateman is going to miss the next few weeks of the season. if you can afford to stash him, hold him, you can. I think it's fine. You put him on IR plus depending on your league, but I don't think it's the end of the world to drop this guy. He's going to miss a few weeks due to a foot injury. And he hasn't shown us a whole lot. He had a couple touchdowns earlier in the season. I really think that Lamar needs a guy like Bateman to kind of get to the next level. We know about his rushing upside, but we as Lamar owners, like, I think we all want him to have that ceiling, that he could reach that ceiling. And I think he just needs a wide receiver to throw the football to. I don't think Deshaun Jackson is the answer. Is Andrews going to play this week? I think likely is an interesting deep league tight end stream as well. As I mentioned, we have 6 teams on bye. So we'll recap last night. Not a lot of takeaways. We'll take a look at the early lines here in week 9 of the NFL season. Take a look at some quarterback streams, defense streams, kind of hit the waiver wire through the schedule. I see ZT in the house. He's here for some fantasy football talk. You got some start and sit questions already here on a Tuesday. I love it. Hardcores. And we appreciate all the hardcores. We appreciate everybody at Game Plus Network watching live on our YouTube channel. Smash the like button if you can, and live on our Twitter feed as well. We're going to take a quick break. There are 12 games on the ice tonight in the NHL. I'm going to dive into that in a little bit with some picks and some props. We have game 3 actually happening tonight. It looks like it's going to happen tonight. Last night it was postponed in Philadelphia. We're still going to have Lance McCullers on the bump for the Astros, but a bit of a break. I think that the postponed game certainly helps the Phillies. Was in on the Astros yesterday. I thought it was going to be a bit of a bullpen game. Noah Syndergaard was expected to get the start last night, and I didn't expect him to go too deep into that ball game. Now Suarez is going to get the ball for the Phillies. Just that extra day does help the Phillies because the advantage really is with the Astros bullpen and their deep rotation. So this is certainly beneficial for the Philadelphia Phillies. We'll talk about that series in a little bit as well. Keep her locked. A lot to get to here on Mean Streets. We'll be back in a couple.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. Prize Picks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have Prize Picks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our Prize Picks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
Welcome back in. Chris Meaney here with you. Mean Streets Live on our FTN Network YouTube page and on a Game Plus Network here this afternoon. Always appreciate you guys hanging out. Yeah, if you have any fantasy football questions, waiver wire stuff, now is the time to kind of get them in. We're going to run through all of that stuff in just a little bit. For last night here, not a lot. I guess when I finished watching that game last night, the Browns and the Bengals, I thought to myself that, wow, there are a lot of mediocre teams in the NFL. There really are. I mean, Joe Burrow's 0-4 now in his career against Cleveland. Give credit to the Browns. You know, they got after Joe Burrow. Again, the same sort of things happening in Cincinnati, you know, getting after the quarterback. Joe Mixon doesn't look efficient running between the tackles. I thought yesterday actually was a pretty good night in terms of betting for us on this show besides Joe Mixon. I mean, we had Mixon for the rushing yards. We talked about, you know, his expected fantasy points versus his fantasy points. The fact that he's still getting a lot of touches inside, headed into the week as number one in terms of running backs and red zone rushing attempts inside the 20, the 10, and the 5. And, a big chunk of his team's rushing percentage as well. Like he's up near 80% of all the touches inside the red zone. Now, after last night, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, these are both guys that are inside the top 5 in red zone rushing attempts as well. But for Mixon, only 8 carries yesterday. I know game script was part of that. I know that the Bengals are a neutral team. Like in neutral situations, this is a team that likes to throw the football. And Joe Burrow hadn't had a lot of games where he hadn't had his number one guy in Jamar Chase. And last night he struggled. He looked like a guy that was missing his BFF. Burrow was 25 for 35, 2 touchdowns and an interception. As I mentioned, Mixon only 8 carries for 27 yards. We did get Mixon's receiving yard prop. He continues to be a big player in the passing game, and he will be moving forward as long as Jamar Chase is out. He has 3 grabs in every single game this season. He had 7 yesterday for only 32 yards. We only needed him to have 23. He had 32, and he had 9 targets, which led the way. So he led the way in targets and catches for the Bengals. Needed 5 catches, 6 catches from T. Higgins. So there was 2 that we didn't get last night. It was Mixon rushing and Higgins catches. He did have a nice touchdown there, 49 yards for a touchdown on 3 receptions. And on the other side, well, I guess we had Hayden Hurst over 3.5. He's a tight end streaming option. We'll get to the buys. The team's on buy and stream some, tight ends. He's certainly an option. 4 grabs for 42 yards. He reeled in all 4 of the targets that went his way. And then Tyler Boyd looked like he was going to have a pretty big day early on. There was a couple nice throws to him and catches. And then after that, it was just really nothing at all. It just couldn't get anything going. Cincinnati didn't score until the end, I believe, the end of the third quarter, maybe the early part of the fourth quarter. But by that point, the game was out of hand. Credit to Jacoby Brissett. Didn't have to do a whole lot. 17 for 22, 278 and a touchdown. Nick Chubb was phenomenal as always. We had his rushing yard prop. Vegas just continues to undersell him. It was at 80 yesterday. It was 70 the week before that. I think he's got 100 yards in 4 or 5 games of the season. He had a 101 for on 23 carries and 2 touchdowns. Amari Cooper, we had over 52.5 receiving yards. He had a $131. Continues to have a really good season for the Browns. Had a touchdown, 5 grabs. If you were in on Donovan Peoples-Jones, he hit. And Kareem Hunt got a lot of work yesterday, more than I thought. There's some reports that they're going to showcase him, but I'm thinking everybody already knows what Kareem Hunt has to offer anyway. He's a really good running back, but maybe Cleveland was showcasing him. There's reports that there are teams interested in him, for 4th round pick. I think that'd be I'm looking at the Rams, although I don't know how much he would help out the Rams. All of their backs right now on their roster are not good. The offensive line is also not good, but I could see the Rams doing something like that. But do they have any draft picks left to acquire Kareem Hunt for a 4th? I think they can I think they could get it done there. But he did have a pretty good game. As I mentioned, it was one of the games that he's been more involved in lately. 11 carries for 42 yards, and he reeled in all 4 of his targets for 4 receptions there. So the Browns win, and the AFC West, or the AFC, is just, it continues to be, I don't know, who's good? As I mentioned, who's good in the NFL? Bills, Eagles, Chiefs. That's a tier on its own. Then I put the Cowboys and the Vikings in that tier, or the next tier. And then after that, I don't know. Like, I think the Giants are in the top 10. The Ravens are in the top 10. I think Miami's in the top 10. I'd put the Titans in there too, although I don't fully believe in the Titans. Ultimately, they are going to need to have Ryan Tannehill back if they're going to compete with the Bills or the Chiefs in a playoff matchup. Like, they're not going to be able to go with Malik Willis. And Derrick Henry had a monster game again, 32 carries, 200-plus rushing yards. Like 4 straight games at 200 yards against the Texans. So I'd say that they're in a tier in its own, but there's or I guess a tier with Baltimore and Miami, the Titans in there with the Giants. But there are a lot of mediocre teams in the NFL. Top heavy with 3 squads, and I'd say the Cowboys are right there as well, and the Vikings. But after that, I mean, it's completely wide open. It's anybody's guess. We got some stuff here, some questions. Rest of the season. Jimmy G, Jared Goff, or Justin Fields. So Fields is running around a lot more lately, but I still think his ceiling is kind of capped because he doesn't really throw the football all that much. He's been held under 200 yards passing, I believe, in 3 straight games and 4 or 5. Let's see. 151, 179, 190. Yeah, he's been under 200 in every game but one. His season high is 208 passing yards. He only has 1 game with more than 1 passing touchdown since week 1, and it came against the Cowboys. Looked pretty good against Dallas, considering A really good defense in Dallas. He had a 73.9% completion rate, only chucked the ball 23 times. He hasn't thrown the ball over 23 times. Actually, he's only thrown the ball over 23 times once this season. It was against Washington, 27 times there. Everything else is like low 20s, high teens, but he is running. So that's nice, right? If he's averaging, I think a career high 53 rushing yards off the top of my head. Let's just see. It's 53 rushing yards, 35 as a rookie. So you're getting that kind of production on the ground. It gives you a nice, solid, safe floor. I'd say he's ahead of Goff for me, but I think the answer here is Jimmy G. I think it's Jimmy G. And we touched on it last week. Daily Handle's in the house. He's asking a Zeke question. We'll get into that in just a second there, dude. But, you had a question last week. I think it was like Cousins or Jimmy G. And I think I said Cousins for that game, but Jimmy G moving forward. Jimmy G, right? You add CMC to that offense. You got Debo, you got Kittle, you got Brendan Ayuk, all guys that are very explosive after the catch. You got a good defense in San Fran and an excellent play caller in Shanahan. So I think Jimmy G is honestly the answer here. And if you look at Fields, you got a bye week in week 14, a decent schedule coming up, right? Miami, Detroit, Atlanta, a little bit tougher. I do have some respect for the Jets defense, but Green Bay. But again, the one thing is that ceiling. Like, it's nice he's had 20 fantasy points in 3 straight games, really just running the ball. I just don't know how much that changes offensively and to throw the football here. After this week, Jimmy G out of the bye, the Chargers, the Cardinals, the Saints, the Dolphins, the Bucks. We got Seattle, Washington, a really good playoff schedule there. Seattle, Washington, and Las Vegas for Jimmy G. He's been pretty consistent. I wonder about his ceiling as well. He obviously doesn't have that same sort of rushing floor as Fields, but 17 plus fantasy points in 4 straight games. He's got 4 straight games with 2 passing touchdowns. And Debo didn't play last week, and you expect him to return out of the bye. So, Nick, I would rank them Jimmy G, Fields, and Goff. And, Goff has been okay as well. He's been much better at home over the past couple of years in a dome than on the road. He's got the Packers this week. I'm not totally in on him. It sounds like Jameson Williams is still a little bit a ways away from returning. And that's, I'd like to see him back in the lineup. But there's been some highs and some lows with Goff, right? You have a 34-point showing. You have a 3-point showing, a 6-point showing. And last week, he did have a good game, 321 passing yards. He only had 1 touchdown. But the schedule is tough for him. Green Bay still has some players defensively. They've given up the 4th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. In Chicago is not going to be an easy game for him. At New York against the Giants is not going to be an easy game for him. At home against Buffalo certainly is not going to be an easy game. The Jacksonville Jaguars have a really good defense. That's not going to be an easy game. And then the Jets week 15 playoffs. So I'm kind of out on Goff. I'd rank them Jimmy G, Fields, and then Goff. There's another question here. Need 1/2 PPR, Romeo Doubs, Rondell Moore, Tyler Algier, and Garrett Wilson. So again, this is very, very early in the week for start and sit, but we appreciate you hanging out here. In order for me to really, truly answer this question, I need to know the matchups. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't know all the matchups off the top of my head. Tuesday evening is when I do my rankings. But Tyler, do you have the schedule for week 9 and we can walk through this together? So we have Romeo Doubs in a matchup against Detroit, which is a really good matchup against the Lions. They can't stop anybody. Rondell Moore, who just had a fantastic showing last week with Arizona. He's going to be a hot waiver wire pickup. I like him against Seattle. I think he's a pretty good start. Tyler Algier, he's still, that backfield's still his for now. He's catching a couple passes, getting some goal line work. It is a little bit split. We're still seeing Huntley get some run, but Algier, it's been back-to-back showings, double-digit fantasy points. What more can you ask for? He's scoring some touchdowns. The Atlanta Falcons are leading the NFC South here after 8 weeks of the season, if you can believe it or not. Who do the Falcons play this week? Oh, Chargers. Yeah, that's a really good spot against the Chargers. They can't stop the run. I don't think he has a high ceiling, though. I think what you're getting from Tyler Algier is really just what you're going to get, like a guy that's going to get 15, 16 carries, here and there, acting as the lead. You hope that he scores a touchdown. He did score a touchdown last week. It was a receiving touchdown, right? I don't think but again, double-digit carries in 5 straight games. Not blowing you away with the efficiency, 16 for 50, 14 for 39. It's really not all that appealing. But what we know about the Chargers, They've been one of the worst run defenses in the NFL over the past couple of seasons. They cannot stop the run. They got a lot of guys that are hurting defensively as well. 3 catches on 3 targets for 46 yards was nice. Where was that a couple weeks ago, Tyler Algier, when I took the over 1.5 catches at plus money? I thought that was going to be a good one. He didn't have a catch in his 3 previous games before the weekend where he reeled in 3. I don't think I'd start him, though. It's a good spot, but I don't know. And I'm not starting Garrett Wilson against the Bills. No chance. I'm just not doing it. I think that he can get a lot of targets, especially if, Corey Davis is out again, but I just can't do it. I see it. 7 targets, 6 grabs, 115 yards. I'd say he gets double-digit targets in a game where the Jets are 13-point dogs. Did this just happen? Are you breaking more news on the show? That is significant. That is a significant move. The Vikings are going to be a team you don't want to play in the playoffs. TJ Hockenson traded to the Minnesota Vikings. My goodness. RIP Irv Smith. Irv Smith, though, that sounded like a significant injury. It must be to make this move. He was headed for an MRI, a high ankle sprain. Wow. Okay. Lions or sellers. I have some Hockenson in dynasty leagues. Oh, what does this mean right away? Hockenson, like, he goes to a situation where he's not the number one guy. This is a really good move, real life move for Minnesota. I don't know what the return is here, but that is a big time move for the Vikings. They're not messing around. They won 5 straight games. I think they have a 2 or 3 game lead here on the Packers. Originally, I think it kind of hurts Adam Thielen. I think Justin Jefferson will be fine. I still think he's going to be the go-to guy. They should be able to move the ball more efficiently on offense with, Hockenson and Adam Thielen, and you got Cook out of the backfield. This is a really strong Viking squad. I think I'd like his value a little bit more in Detroit, though. I don't know. Like, it was such a bad team. The Vikings get Hockenson, 4th round pick, and then a 4th round pick. Lions get a 2nd and a 3rd. Okay, so that's Hockenson and a 4th. Is that Hockenson and 2 4ths? I'm reading that correctly? Hockenson, 2 4ths, and then the Lions get a 2nd and a 3rd. Not a bad return. It's okay. Did they have to give up 2 4s? A 2nd and a 3rd, though. Detroit's doing it right. They're selling some of these pieces. They're not in it. This is another year where they remain competitive, but they just can't find a way to win games. They were up in that game in the 4th quarter. Yeah, 2 4s. Okay. Thank you, ZT and Tyler, for breaking the news here on the show. This is fun. Last week we had Kadarius on the show, who was traded as well. I love trade deadlines in all sports. I love when just players switch jerseys. It's fun. I like trades and, some value here. So my initial thoughts is just, I feel like Hockenson, is the number 2 option in a team that was just so awful defensively. They were always chucking. They were always playing from behind. The past couple of weeks, it's not like he was getting a ton of targets, 5, 4, 4, 4. He had a nice catch. He got 80 yards there. He had a really good game against Seattle, $179 and 2 touchdowns. That's the outlier game. It's basically half of his yards in that one game. But ultimately, he is going to a better team, a team that's going to score more points, a better quarterback. Just overall a better squad. But I don't know if he gets a significant upgrade here. I think this is a better real life move. I think it's good for, Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe more targets there. Again, if Jameson Williams can get into the lineup and get going, is a guy that could certainly trend up. And then too bad for Irv Smith with the injury. And when he returns, it's going to be the Hockenson show there. And that's just Nick, it's not even close now, right? When we're saying pick 2, Jimmy G and Fields, it's not even close now. Goff, without his guy, TJ Hockenson in there. Good for Swift. Yeah, it is good for Swift. It's another guy too. Yeah, it's great for Swift. It's great for Amon-Ra. And, in deeper formats and deeper leagues, I'm in, people are in 16. I'm in a 16-team league as well. I may take a look at, a couple players here. I think Reynolds is, his ownership is 35%, 6 targets last week. It's just not super appealing with these guys, right? Khalif Raymond, and we're going to get excited about Khalif Raymond. He had 76 yards, get 75 yards in 3 straight games. So these are guys in deeper formats with DJ Chark on IR, with Jameson Williams, not close to returning. As of last week, he's going to miss at least another month. May not get anything out of him at all in a redraft setting this year, but I think he's a good buy low. And dynasty leagues, if you're in a tough spot and you're just looking for assets, for next season, Jameson Williams, I think, is a guy I'd go knocking on the owner and say, listen, maybe the owner is maybe they have a chance here at the playoffs. You give them a piece on the roster to help them, and then maybe you add a second or a third, and you get Jameson Williams. I think he's going to be a heck of a player in the NFL. We probably won't see it this year. Crazy stuff. Even more reason to like the Vikings, right? I mean, they're right there, as I mentioned, with the boys in that second tier. Wildness. We're going to take a break. We're going to roll through that schedule. I got some thoughts, in some of these matchups and some waiver wire pickups and things like that. And again, if you do have any start to say questions, I don't even think I answered that question from ZT. Need one half point PPR. I think I would go with, I think I'm leaning Dubs. Usually I lean with the running back because he's going to touch the ball more than anybody else that you've mentioned. Like Garrett Wilson's going to get double-digit targets, but they're going to be all over him. They didn't even use Elijah Moore. Zach Wilson does not look good. Now he's got to play the Buffalo Bills. I don't think I could go there. I'm back and forth between Dubs and Algier, as Algier's in a good spot against the Chargers, and I know he's going to get 15 carries. And if he can catch 3 passes, you know what? That's kind of where I'm leaning right now, actually, is Tyler Algier. I'm talking myself into that one as just a guy in a good matchup here against the Chargers. Going to touch the ball 15 plus times. Probably needs to find the end zone really to have a good day. He hasn't been that efficient, but this is a decent spot. I'm leaning that way. I think the guy with the highest ceiling is Dubs. I think Green Bay kind of figured it out last week, running the rock with the 2 guys that they have in the backfield. A monster game from Aaron Jones. I thought we'd see more from a receiving yard standpoint, but running the rock, you can run on Detroit. I think they'll use both guys. Come back on, check in on Friday. If Alan Lazard is not playing on Friday, maybe we go Dubs. Maybe we go Dubs in that spot. Christian Watson suffered a concussion. So I'd say Rodgers throws a touchdown pass or 2 against that weak secondary in Detroit. So I think the highest ceiling belongs with Dubs. I think the safest play is actually Algier, but the ceiling is just not as high as you'd like it to be. We'll take a quick break. Hopefully another trade or 2 happens here. And like I said, we're going to hit the waiver wire and a lot of hockey talk here on Mean Streets. 12 games on the ice. Keep her locked. We'll be back in a couple.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN Data.
Not that I didn't believe you guys, but yeah, in the break, TJ Hockenson, Vikings. You guys could say anything to me, and I'd be like, oh, wow, that really happened. And then it didn't. But I know Tyler is helping us run the show here, of course, like he always is. And you guys are breaking news on the show, and I absolutely love it. So, again, last night, don't really have much more that Joe Mixon hasn't been efficient. I still view him as a buy low candidate. I don't know if it's ever going to turn around for him. This is the way the offensive line looks. I know they revamped it in the offseason. It still looks just as bad as it did over the past couple of years. But the fact that he's going to catch a bunch of passes out of the backfield, I think it kind of makes up for the lack of efficiency on the ground. And he's still getting a big chunk of the work and a lot of the work inside the red zone as well. And Chase is going to miss a couple weeks here, so he could pop off and be something. And and if Kareem Hunt does get traded, it's not going to be Nick Chubb that just catches a bunch of balls out of the backfield. But Dearness Johnson will take that Kareem Hunt role. So maybe in deeper leagues, maybe you just want to have him, he was not, as long as Kareem Hunt doesn't get traded today. Probably get Dearness Johnson for $0, and you probably don't even have to put a claim in. You can wake up super early and grab him in the morning if you wanted to go that route. I've done it before. Don't judge me. I've set alarms at 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. Sometimes I'm up just waiting to grab people like a fantasy football psycho. Week 9. Tyler, let's bring up the schedule. Early look, early feels of week 9. As I mentioned, we got 6 teams on bye: Cleveland, Dallas, Denver, New York, the Giants, the Steelers, and San Fran. So we got some players, right? Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb. You got the Dallas boys, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz trending up. Dak as a quarterback. You got Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. I don't know if you're really rostering either running back or you're rostering the backs and Gordon and Latavius, but you're not starting them with confidence. The Giants, of course, Saquon's a big one. Daniel Jones is like a super flex quarterback. He's been, certainly returning a value in those settings. Pittsburgh, not a lot of excitement happening there. Najee Harris, my goodness, not doing a whole lot, not even really getting the ball out of the backfield. Hard to feel good about Deontay or Pickens or anybody in the Steelers offense lately. Sanford could see Deontay traded. I'd say if I'm the Steelers, just trade this guy. Deontay, you got a nice young buck in Pickens. And then San Fran, a lot of studs here, not on the waiver wire. So let's get after it and start there up at the top with Philadelphia. The Texans are dead last in rush DVOA defense. They can't stop a nosebleed. And Philly is just, they can come at you in waves. Last week was A.J. Brown. The week before that, it was Devontae Smith. The week before that, it's Miles Sanders. Jalen Hurts, 4 passing touchdowns. Man, he's really starting to be in the MVP conversation. I joked about it 4 weeks ago, but he really is. 4 passing touchdowns. I think he's still 5-1. Allen's the favorite. Allen's coming off his worst game of the season. But I don't know how the Texans stop Philadelphia, even in a short week. I do believe the Eagles are going to lose at one point this season. Eric Young does not think so. He thinks they're going to go perfect. It's going to be tough for them to go perfect. They got a Sunday night football game against the Packers, which won't be easy. And they got to go into Dallas. And they got 2 games against the Giants. Never easy. Even them owning the Giants over the past, decade or so, it's obviously not going to be easy, a divisional game there. And but anyways, Miles Sanders, big Miles Sanders week. I think you're rolling him out anyways, but just the fact that Houston can't stop anybody on the ground. We saw Derrick Henry 200-yard rush, 200 yards against the Texans. Actually 4 straight games for Derrick Henry, 200 yards. But you're rolling out everybody on the Philadelphia side of things, and I wouldn't worry about Damian Pierce. I'd still play him. The Eagles, the weakness that they do have defensively would be stopping the run. We talked about gash rate, and which is an FTN tool that we talked about last week in terms of the Texans, 17.4%. I don't know what the numbers are after last week, probably worse, but gash rate, just the percentage of runs against that have gone 10 plus yards. The Texans were number 1. The Eagles were inside the top 5 as well. Like, again, that if you're looking at a weakness, they have arguably, I think, the best cornerback duo in the league in Slay and Bradbury. I believe Slay is number 1 passer rating, and then Bradbury is number 2. So those guys are legit. I think I could start Cooks, though, in a matchup where the Texans are down in this game. There's not a lot else there, to throw the football to. Does Nico Collins get back into the lineup? That'd be a really risky play considering he missed last week with a groin injury. I do like him overall. I thought he was trending up, and he's somebody I believe to stash because if I'm the Texans, I'm trading Cooks today, tomorrow. Who wants this guy? We are rebuilding. Give us all the draft picks that we can get. Remember years ago when they had Watson, they were a contender. They were trading all kinds of picks away for just David Johnson and I can't believe they traded Hopkins away for what they did. But yeah, just this is a team now that I think is starting to get it right. Let's acquire some picks. But Pierce going to be into his receiving yard prop, his reception prop, and I think he can top 67 rushing yards, which I do believe is his prop. So play him, play Cooks. Going to be playing from behind quite a bit. Tyler, I'm going to need you to check out that board again, dude, just so I can roll through some of these matchups. My apologies. Joshua Palmer, make sure he is owned. Absolutely, Palmer. Don't worry. Last week was a concussion, and a couple weeks before, he had 58% of the team snaps. There was an ankle injury. Those are outlier games for him. He's going to go back to 90% of the snaps. I do have a question at whether he can handle the top coverage because Mike Williams is going to miss 4 to 6 weeks potentially. Joshua Palmer has like a 6 dot. Does he change a little bit? He's the outside wide receiver. Now he's going to face top corners. It's not all that cut and dry, like automatically, oh, this guy's going to be a stud because, he's going to get all the targets. Just example, last night, T. Higgins, right? You just assume T. Higgins is going to ball out, get a ton of targets and ton of catches because there's no Jamar Chase. It doesn't always work out that way. New rules for certain players, soft coverage when Mike Williams and Keenan are on the field. But I still like Joshua Palmer a lot. I'd make him a priority to try to get this guy. I would play him this week as long as he is healthy and he's active. He's good to go. Keenan, even if I think it's better. Deesh is in the house too with Palmer. It could be nice this week. I agree. If Keenan is out, definitely, even if Keenan is in, I think it helps Palmer to have Keenan in, because if Keenan doesn't play, then what? You got Eckler catching 15 balls into the backfield again, and that's probably it, right? Doubles on Palmer, a little bit of Carter in the slot. But either way, I think Palmer is good. On the other side there with the Falcons, it was really nice to see Kyle Pitts have a game and get some targets, scored a touchdown. Drake London's not getting a lot of play. It's still a team that's not throwing the football a lot. And you're going up against a Charger squad where the game plan for them has been all year to kind of run the rock, right? Run the rock. And it's not going to change against the Chargers. But the Chargers push the pace. We'll see a little bit of Pitts. But that's what we saw last week with Pitts. That's why I always play Pitts, because I know he's burned us here and there, but he still has that ceiling. And the tight end position is so weak that if he finds a way to score a touchdown, or if he can get 5 catches for 50 yards, which doesn't seem like a whole lot in a PPR league that's 10 points, half points, like 7.5. He's still finishing as a top 10 tight end, right? I mentioned yesterday, if you want to sell high on him, the only way that I would sell high on him is if I got Dulcich off the waiver wire. We'll talk about him in just a minute. If I had Schultz, excuse me. And then all the other tight ends, like I clearly, you probably don't have Goddard, and you probably don't have, Hockenson and Pitts. Like Pitts may have been dropped. Maybe you picked them up, but Ingram, if I had Ingram, I'd consider trading Pitts as well, selling high off the big week, name value, maybe help out the balance of your squad. But I feel like you just have Pitts, you just roll him out, right? I don't think you're really fooling anybody with trying to trade Pitts and selling high on him. But we'll see what you can get. I'd love to hear it. He is one of the most traded players in fantasy over the last month, but I think that's people buying low on Kyle Pitts, and partly people like, get this guy off my squad. I can't deal with him anymore. We got to take another quick break, and we will roll through the rest of that schedule. Again, there are 12 games on the ice. Dangle Bet Sally is live on our FTN Network YouTube page, and you're watching on Game Plus. It's going to come your way in just a little bit. Eric Young and I broke down all 12 games in the NHL, called some shot props and point props, and of course, some goal scorers, and took some fantasy hockey questions. So you can go back and watch that, but I will have some picks here for you to round out the show. But I want to roll through the rest of the schedule and talk about some waiver wire pickups and kind of get some start and sits in there as well. So a little bit more to get to here from a football standpoint. Mean Streets returns after the break here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back in. Y2J29, just waiting on Kareem Hunt to get traded. Fingers crossed. Maybe you're a Kareem Hunt owner, or you're a Nick Chubb owner. You're looking for this guy to go. I still think there's something in the back of my head that say the Rams. Because it's like what they got going on is not good. But maybe it could be the Karen Williams show moving forward. But we'll keep an eye on everything. Kareem Hunt. Yeah, I would like it as a Nick Chubb owner, but as I mentioned, I don't know if Dearness Johnson probably takes that Kareem Hunt role and they just continue to move on. Let's check up that schedule. If you're just joining us, TJ Hockenson got dealt to the Minnesota Vikings here today. I think his value takes a little bit of just a slight downtick, just a slight one, right? He's on a much better team. And there's a lot of mouths going on there, a lot of mouths to feed there in Minnesota, and they're not going to be playing from behind quite often, but he's definitely on a better offense, so it could potentially balance out. I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't, you still start TJ Hawkins, still a borderline top 5 tight end in fantasy football. Where do we leave off? Oh, yeah, Miami, Chicago. I think the change is happening with Khalil Herbert. I think, he's really, really closing the gap. We can all see it. He's the better back. He's more explosive. He's getting some run. He's catching some balls. He had a receiving touchdown a couple weeks ago. We talked about Fields earlier, that he's playing really good football lately, mostly running the ball, which is giving him a nice rushing floor. But Khalil Herbert is like a flex play. I still would start Montgomery over him. I have Montgomery ranked higher. Montgomery's an unrestricted free agent after this season. I think he's out the door, and it's going to be the Khalil Herbert show. I know. Try to buy low in dynasty leagues. Again, it's all about your situation. Can you try to get Khalil Herbert from a squad? Are you rebuilding? If there's no Montgomery next year, Herbert, he's going to be a rock solid RB2 if there's no Montgomery on the squad. We already know. We've seen games without Herbert, and games without Montgomery, rather. And we've seen Herbert, the kind of production that he gets, and really, really good running back. Miami, Mostert, the 2 wide receivers. I think Gesicki is interesting. I mean, he's scoring a touchdown here and there. And again, at the tight end position, if you score a touchdown, you're finishing as a top 10 tight end, but he's getting 6 or 7 targets here and there. He still is involved in the offense. And, there's some mixed reports heading into the season that he wouldn't be, that they wanted to trade him, and, potentially they could deal him and move on from him. But I think they got something going on too. Has looked pretty good since he's returned to the lineup. So, you're starting all those guys, and with a couple tight ends on by like Schultz and Pat Freiermuth, George Kittle, he could be on waiver wires, but 60% ownership I'm seeing here on Yahoo. Carolina, PJ Walker is second in the NFL in air yards over the last 2 weeks. DJ Moore, we've talked about DJ Moore. I wouldn't sell high. I continue to believe in the volume that he's getting without CMC. We touched on it when the CMC trade happened, that it would be great for DJ Moore, and it has been great for DJ Moore. I want to give a shout out to Terrace Marshall. I mentioned him last week and yesterday. If you can pick him up, if you could buy low in dynasty, I still believe in Terrace Marshall. I think he's a good wide receiver. That it just took some time. There were some reports last year he couldn't pick up the playbook. He just wasn't really getting on the field either. But your Carolina rule is no longer there. Let's see what they got in this guy, LSU product, who was really good in college, and he just had a career day last week in terms of snaps and running routes, and he had a nice catch there on the final drive of, in regular time in the fourth quarter near the end, before that DJ Moore had the touchdown there. So Terrace Marshall in deep leagues, certainly on my radar. And Deontay Foreman, right? We talked about Deontay Foreman was a stash for us. We love Foreman on this show, even if Chuba comes back. And I saw a report of them working out some other running backs. So good news if you have Foreman. I've stashed him the whole time, thinking that just in case CMC went down, don't want to wish any injuries. It was not the thing I was trying to address on this show, but we saw it last year from Deontay Foreman when he filled in for Derrick Henry. He had 3 100-yard games, got back-to-back games with 100 yards. You go back to last season, there's 6 games where he's had 15-plus carries, and in 5 of them, he's hit the century mark. He's a really good running back. He didn't catch any balls out of the backfield last week, which is something I thought he would do, especially with Carolina playing from behind. But I think he's the guy. I think he's got more talent than Chuba Hubbard. When Hubbard comes back, he's going to play behind Deontay Foreman. So play Deontay Foreman with confidence. Up on that board as well. Who's Carolina playing in that matchup? Oh, yeah, the Bengals. You just roll out on all the guys that you have. I think Hayden Hurst, as a tight end with some of those guys I mentioned, you can roll him out. Same with Robert Tonyan. You can play him. We talked about Dubs in a pretty good spot. Both running backs. I think, we could see a little bit more from A.J. Dillon. So far, I take the L on A.J. Dillon. I thought 5.5 touchdowns. I thought he'd get there. He's got 1, and it happened in week 1. Oh, my goodness. But Aaron Jones, against Detroit, he's going to be the lead, and he should be the lead. But we may get a little bit more AJ in this spot. That line's going to change. I think the Packers do win. I wouldn't be taking them on 4.5, 5.5, things like that. If you can still get 3, I think that they go in Detroit and win by a field goal. The Lions, Amon-Ra Swift. Jamal Williams, I think, is a start. A little fun revenge, but he's been acting as the goal line back there in Detroit. We're going to have to rapid fire through some more thoughts here. Colts, Alec Pierce, kind of showed up, but I'm still hesitant to play anybody outside of Michael Pittman. Taylor didn't have that great of a day. Not really used in the passing game a couple weeks ago, 7 grabs. I don't know if that's going to be the case here with Ellinger under center, but you're still starting him. A Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson led the way in targets and receptions for Pats. You're starting Jacoby Meyer. I think we're going to see the Pats trade one of 2 of Aguilar or maybe Kendrick Bourne, but you're playing Jacoby Meyer. I'm not crazy about Hunter Henry, and Damian Harris wouldn't touch my roster at all. It's the Stevenson show, guys. We talked about him as a breakout. It's happening. It's here. Maybe we get Damian Harris out of town, and it's all Stevenson. Buffalo Bills, you're rolling out everybody. Gabe Davis, even Isaiah McKenzie, I think, as a flex in deep formats, 14, 16-team leagues. Singletary, have Cook on your roster just in case. He's linked to a really good Buffalo Bills team. Their schedule is so soft down the stretch. I'm not saying to start this guy because he's going to rack up a bunch of garbage time fantasy points. Like, that's really all the fantasy points he's had this season is garbage time stuff. But just in case, if Singletary goes down, then you have a running back and arguably the best offense in football in what is a really, really soft schedule the rest of the way. I mentioned the Jets. I don't think I'd play anybody from the Jets, to be honest with you. Conklin, if you need a tight end, he should get a lot of targets there. And then Carter should catch a couple balls to the backfield, PPR, full point setting, things like that. Let's just break one more time. I think some people are hanging out here. Hopefully you're getting something out of this from maybe some buy lows, some sell highs, some start and sits and things like that. So we'll wrap up with the rest of the schedule, and then we will finish off with a couple hockey plays. So keep her locked. A couple more segments here on Mean Streets. Welcome back in. More breaking news, this time from Daily Handle. The Nets have fired Steve Nash. Man, poor Steve Nash. Honestly, former Mav, one of my guys, maybe not the best head coach, but this is not on him. Like, can you imagine the stuff that this guy has to deal with the divas that are on his squad and Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, and Kyrie Irving? I mean, it's not on Steve Nash that the Nets are 2-5. 2-5, I think. It's not on Steve Nash, but good luck to whoever the heck they're going to bring in and try to make that work. And Kevin Durant, I don't know who the heck he thinks he is. Like, trade me, I'm not going to play. Oh, fine, I'll play. Or I'm not going to play without Steve Nash. So, it's all about Kevin Durant, and he gets whatever he wants to get. So, yeah, Deesh, Why did they not fire him before the year if they're going to do this now? Absolutely, right? With all that stuff that was going on in the offseason with Steve Nash and this team and the turmoil, just do it before the season starts. You know, it was just unfair, I think, to him to start the season and then you give him 2 weeks, start 2-5, and they just fire this guy. The Nets are completely overrated. Kevin Durant is completely overrated at this point of his career. Kyrie Irving, they're all overrated. Good luck, Brooklyn, making the playoffs this year. Honestly, I could probably make it, but I ain't going to do anything. Nobody takes them there seriously. Let's bring up that schedule one more time. We'll get through it here. Where do we pick off? So Vikings and Washington. It was the first game, really. We saw Antonio Gibson, really split time with Brian Robinson. I still think Brian Robinson's the lead, but Gibson, we could feel better about Gibson, right? In a PPR league, maybe as a flex guy. Terry McLaurin's looked much better here with Taylor Heineke under center. You're rolling out all the Vikings there. We'll see Hockenson. I'd play him for sure. You got a week here to get with the team. Cook, you're rolling out all the studs there. I like Minnesota to win that game. Las Vegas, they didn't score any points last week. It's hard to really feel confident about picking this squad, but it is a get-right spot for Trevor Lawrence against the Raiders. They've allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. So if you have Trevor Lawrence, you're thinking about dropping him maybe one more week. You can roll with him. The backfield is Travis Etienne's, Josh Jacobs. It should be a heavy dose of both of these guys. You can buy Avante Adams if you want. Hunter Renfrow, no thanks. If Darren Waller is sidelined, Foster Moreau in a deeper format, you can roll him out. I wouldn't be playing Carr. I do have some respect for the Jags defense. Right now, I do have a lean to Las Vegas there. Seattle, right? Geno, I think you play Geno in a super flex. Definitely. Borderline QB1 start this week. DK Metcalf did not miss any time, and he scored a touchdown. Lockett, Kenneth Walker, these guys all look good. Rondale Moore is a great wide receiver pickup. We had a question about him earlier. I would play him as a wide receiver 3 this week. PPR, I think there's more value with him. I don't believe he has a high ceiling. We did see his ability after the catch to score a touchdown. I think it was a 37, 38-yard touchdown catch that he had. There was a game last year where he had 11 grabs and only 51 yards, right? He's a PPR guy. The ceiling is not significant, but he is going to be the number 2 option there. I do believe him ahead of Zach Ertz after Hopkins, and I think you could start Zach Ertz as well. The Rams, I would not start any Rams running back. I would have Kieran Williams picked up and stashed. Not surprised that Ronnie got more play over Darrell Henderson. We talked about it on the show last week. The offensive line is not great. Cooper Kupp avoided a significant injury, so he's going to play. You can feel good about him. Allen Robinson, is just, if you're super desperate, a flex guy. He's not going to be ranked as a top 35 wide receiver for me. You're rolling out Godwin, you're rolling out Mike Evans, and Cade Otton is a guy that I still like. He scored a touchdown last week. It was called back. If you're in a pinch at the tight end position, premium, 2 tight end leagues, things like that. I think you could play Robert Woods in a spot here, as long as it's Tannehill. The Chiefs are 12.5-point favorites. They just can't run all the time with Derrick Henry. The Chiefs are going to be able to score points. I wouldn't be playing Kadarius Toney just yet, but do have him stashed. I still view him as a sell high candidate. Juju, MVS. These are guys that I would play. Obviously, you're playing Kelsey, and Pacheco have him, but I'm still hesitant to roll him out with confidence. I still think CEH has some value catching passes and getting some work there inside the red zone as well. And then Baltimore have likely pick them up, because who knows about Andrews? Bateman's going to miss a few weeks here. And then on the Saints side of things, it's just Olave and Kamara show. We'll break one more time. We will have some start and sit stuff a little bit later on the week. We have Scott Spratt joining us on Friday. He's fantastic. We'll roll through, he writes an article for us, start and sit. So we will have some stuff a little bit later on the week as we get some practice reports, and maybe we'll have a couple more trades. One more block here. I'm just going to round out with my couple, my favorite shot props for tonight. 12 games on the ice. Back in a couple. Welcome back in. Going to rapid fire through some stuff here. Check out Dangle Bet Sell. I don't want to give everything away. It's coming your way at Game Plus Network. You can go back and watch it on our FTN Network YouTube page. Roman Yossi, 3.5 shots. Barkov, 3.5 shots. Kachuk, 3.5 shots. Arizona's allowed the most rubbers so far this season at 5 per 60. I think Barkov and Kachuk both have 2-point nights. They're both plus money for 2-point nights. I like Vegas. I got them last night in the bet tracker at minus 120. It's getting pretty steep now. You can take them in 60 at minus 105. I think I have them on the puck line at 2-1 as well. Washington played last night against Carolina. You can see the backup goalie. Vegas playing really good hockey. Logan Thompson's been great. Chandler Stevenson for a point, minus 120. Jack Eichel for an assist is plus money. New Jersey over Vancouver. Jesper Bratt, minus 105 for an assist. He's basically got a point in every single game, assist in every single game as well. Basically, minus 105 for an assist, 2.5 shots. I like Jack Hughes plus money for an assist. Jake DeBrusk for a point. I like the over between Boston and Pittsburgh, 6.5. And I like these Edmonton boys, Ryan Nugent Hopkins and Hyman playing with McDavid. They've been fantastic. I like them. Both get points, both gets assists, and both have 3 shots. You get Ryan Nugent Hopkins at plus money. New York and Calgary in 60. That's the Rangers, DeBrincat, Batherson, Caulfield, all plus money for shots. Other than that, as Gabe Morency says, you are on your own. Good luck on the ice. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers. Give me trades.